move on to our next keynote speaker, who is Lucasz Alwast, the Metaverse World Building Director at Everdone.
Is the microphone working? Perfect. Let's come from the beginning. Hello everyone on day 2. My name is Lucasz Alwast and I'm a creative producer and world building director at Everdone, which is a Martian theme metaverse environment. And what I would like to speak about today is the behind the scenes of the process of how we're building that world. We're in that process for the last 6 months, so you see it as one of the first people publicly, and we hope that over the coming year, maybe 1 or 2, you'll be able to experience what we're speaking about today conceptually in an actual virtual environment. So I'd like to start with some of the key enablers which allow us to even think about what that metaverse will become. So a very important tool in that process is an Unreal5 Engine, which is the tool for us designers to build a high-fidelity virtual environment. It means that some of the processes that back in the years would take weeks or months to develop now are much more efficient, and when you see how that world looks like in the experience, it is actually very, very powerful. Then the second element is the token, the DOM token, that generally allows to finance the project for us in terms of the development costs, but will also become the currency within the world. So once we go to Mars and there will be certain interactions and a microeconomy of that world, we have a cryptocurrency which is already up there and running. And then the third element of that environment is a Metahero 3D scanner, which was launched back in October here in Dubai, I think around GITEX. And it allows you to scan yourself and put yourself as an avatar to that experience. So one of the challenges that the team developing Metahero faced is that we make great avatars, but then what is the world that we put them into? And Everdome has become the next step. So we will have the avatars and then we can move that into a Martian environment. And the beginning brief from the founder of Everdome is when we think about a Martian experience, where do we place it in terms of thinking about a fictional world? And for us as designers, it was very important to locate it in a world which we think is an imaginable and probable future, but at the same time is far enough that it needs us to think quite creatively and plastically about how to create that world from scratch. So we moved into pop culture and starting to try to localize ourselves in that world. So we have, when we think about the vision and collective imagination of Mars, we have this part of pop culture which is related to getting there and surviving. So as you've read or seen The Martian, it's a great story. It's very realistically shown, and it's also from the side of science and the demands that a person or a small settlement on Mars could face. Or in Ad Astra, which was very interestingly showing how we travel in the inner solar system. It's not that you just get into one rocket and you fly all the way back to Neptune, but you need to fly first to the moon, change the ship, fly to Mars, change the ship on Mars, and fly to Neptune, which is generally how we should think about mission architecture in the solar system, because each of these rockets are very different. So we said that we want to be somewhere between a realistic world, but then one which is more entertaining. So one which is a bit more chic, a bit more glamorous, but at the same time it's not pure science fiction. So we don't want to have a world that you don't think could be possible. And moving from that, we've located some of the main rules of that world. So we said it's about 100 to 50 years from today. We envision that there is human present not only on Mars, but also on the moon of Earth and on the moon of Mars, which is Phobos. And when we're thinking about the challenges for that world, we're fine to tackle what it means to keep outside radiation, How do we deal with gravity? We know we're not going to jump into not in cyberspace, but hyperspace, and we're not looking to put into that world extraterrestrial. So it's something that is quite ahead of us in that world. And these are our values, how we thought we would like that to be experienced by the users. So we would like that world to be positive, energetic, responsible, and entertaining. So when we're thinking about the themes of this event today, which is space, sustainability, and the metaverse, we think that those three threads fit there pretty well. Okay, but then where do we start? The first questions we needed to ask ourselves is, how do we get to Mars? How many passengers do we take there? How big is the Martian settlement? And for us, we had to make those decisions in weeks. So very often, we had 2 or 3 brainstorming sessions, and we made the decision, okay, we're taking 10,000 passengers, then we need to find a ship that is able to do that. And because it is a world of fiction, we can make those decisions pretty smoothly. And moving from there, we've created a concept of a large spaceship, which is actually 200 meters tall. It's called the Everdone Phoenix, and it's the spaceship that takes around 400 passengers from Earth into lower Earth orbit. And moving from there, we said, okay, we needed to have a spaceport. And as the project is associated somehow with Dubai and the Emirates, we said, okay, why don't we pick a dramatic environment which is beautiful at the same time, and we chose Hatta, and we placed some of that spaceport infrastructure in Hatta. But then, as I said, the spaceship is about 200 meters tall. So it is the scale of a skyscraper. So if we wanted to put it realistically in that spot, it would take almost 2/3 of that mountain. So we as concept designers thought, okay, we need to solve that. So we put the propulsion system underwater. And because of that, it's still a very interesting concept that you can have the waters to take off from a lake. But from us, it makes a storyline that is also quite cinematically interesting, because you can imagine seeing rockets starting from there. But then when we start from Hatta, we go on, and we started to design the virtual environment. And I'll have 2 photos and videos that will show that. So this is the first prototype that we did of an external environment, just to see the scale. And then we move from there inside of the spaceport. And as you can see, the design is pretty similar to what you would see in a gaming environment. But for us, this is the first part of the prototype that we can actually see how those things come together. So the access to some of those experiences is allowed thanks to NFTs. And then the things that we're designing from a conceptual part, so the sketches that you see, are then put into that 3D environment. Moving from the spaceport, we're going into space, and we've designed the large spaceship that will take those 10,000 passengers when they get to the lower Earth orbit up until Mars. And this is the spaceship that we came with. It should work as a video. And as designers, again, we were thinking, okay, so what is the engine for that system? Should it be a nuclear one or a solar system one? And we thought, okay, why don't we combine the two? Because as designers, we can do that. And we've came up with this concept that will be taking those passengers to Mars over around 3 months. The next step that we had to challenge is, okay, so where do we have our settlement? And here we made a shortcut, and we're using the same location that NASA used for the Perseverance probe, which is the Isidis Plantilla plane on Mars. And we started to fill that place. So we know it's a crater, it's the Jezero crater, and we looked at it as a location from a game. So for us as designers, we have a crater, we're thinking, where do we put the city, and what is the infrastructure around that? We did 2, maybe 3 brainstorming sessions, and we filled up the whole crater. So the crater is now something which is inhabitable by us. Then we moved from there, and we said, okay, so how do we master plan the city. How do we figure out urbanization? What is the supporting infrastructure? And we had to do that, enable to move to an actual key visual of that city. So as we first had the master plan, then we started to build upon that. And we have the main structure, which is the dome, and then a lot of supporting facilities which are related to energy, which are related to in situ resources, and also mining. And step by step, every month we're moving forward and we're designing that environment. So what you've seen as a preview in terms of what is the rocket, what is the spaceport, we will be then designing the experience on Mars. So what happens once you land there, once you go to the Everdone and have some form of actual life there. In terms of services which are at this moment associated with the project, you can buy NFTs to have access to those experiences, and they are also in various tiers. So there are users who are alpha users, beta users, and they are the ones who are also shaping the way we think about that world. You can buy land in Everdome, so in the city that you've seen and the environment you can see, and we're building a series of partnerships which are very often related to that land and to what you can actually physically build there. And one of the first one was with Alfa Romeo and the Formula 1 team, and there are many more to come. And in the coming months, we will do more, because we move from the spaceport, we move from the spaceship, and we will be asking questions about what is the culture of that city that we're creating? How do you walk on Mars? Like, what are the spacesuits? What's the difference between a pressurized environment and an unpressurized environment? What if you have your own home, your residency? What is the infrastructure in that home? And there's so many questions that we will tackle with, and we're very happy to do so. We have a team which is very interdisciplinary, architects, science consultants, but then we need artists to express that. And once we have the conceptual framework, we are then able to transfer that into a 3D environment, which is the metaverse itself. Probably the experience in a format that we would feel comfortable is immersive, is a project of a year or a bit more than a year to do so, because it's actually quite detailed to figure all that things. Thank you very much.